First and foremost, happy Thursday to each and every one of you. Hope you're having a great week so far. And thank you for joining us for this month's September Accelerate Series webinar. Our topic for this month is very well aligned. Our topic is life assurance conversations with AssetMap. And I chose this topic specifically because you may or may not be aware of that September is actually Life Insurance Awareness Month. So Life Insurance Awareness Month was actually created by an organization called Life Happens. And really, this month was made to remind people of the importance of life insurance for financial security and ultimately protecting their loved ones. And I thought, what better topic for us to do? So that'll be our primary focus today, is just kind of focusing on what tools and features in AssetMap can help us facilitate life insurance conversations so that we can help people get a plan in place, or maybe they already have some plans in place, but we might need to reassess and kind of go from there. So that being said, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We host an Accelerate Series webinar once a month. It's usually the third Thursday of every month. Sometimes I'll push it to the fourth if we have 5 Thursdays in a month, or if there's like a holiday or something like that. But one thing you can always count on is that every month I host an Accelerate Series webinar. The topic will vary. And we do record the sessions and we do make the replays available. Now, if you're an enterprise client, some of our enterprise clients, your home offices require me to submit the replay for approval before we can share it out. So if you don't get the replay later today, that likely means you fall in that category, and I will do everything I can to get it approved for you as quickly as possible. But that being said, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Leah Jean McHenry. I am our Senior Manager of Customer Success here at AssetMap. I've had the pleasure of working here for the last 5.5 years, but I have been working in the financial technology space for well over a decade. So prior to working here, I used to work for a company called eMoney Advisor over there on their training team. I was there for almost 5 years. So as you can imagine, I've trained thousands of financial professionals over the years. I feel like I have a pretty decent tap on the pulse of what's working for people and what's not. And I'm really proud of the product that we offer here at AssetMap, because I think that through having visuals that can help us facilitate meaningful conversations in a way that simplifies sometimes some of the most complex conversations, that's really where we win. If people can track with us and be a part of the conversation, I think that they're going to be much more likely to take action after the fact when we come to them with those action items and those to-dos. Now, if we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, just so you know, most people do call me LJ. You're welcome to call me Leah Jean or Leah or LJ. I don't have a preference. Okay, choose your own adventure. You pick what feels good for you, and I'll be fine with any of them. So, all right, this is going to be our agenda of what we're going to be walking through together today. Again, our primary focus is how to have some life insurance conversations through using AssetMap. So I wanted to highlight some key tools and features that I think are going to be phenomenal to help you do that. Some highlights of what we'll be talking about is we'll go through signals, target maps, household index mining. I'll pepper in a few other features and things that might be beneficial to you. And then, of course, we will always point out where you can go for some continued support. So if you're someone who's like, I think I need a little bit more help, I need to get a little bit more training, we got you. Don't worry about that. There's no lack of resources available to you. And then if you have questions throughout today's training, the best place to do is just submit them in the chat feature in Zoom. If they're applicable, we'll make sure that they get answered on today's call. If it's very case specific or off topic, I might have to ask that we table that and talk about it offline, or you're welcome to reach out to the support team. Okay, no matter what, we'll make sure your questions get answered though. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So when it comes to having life insurance conversations within AssetMap, I think probably one of the biggest things to emphasize is that you have to get households in the application, and you need to get household data. Okay, without the data, you're not really going to be able to leverage our analysis tools and some of our mining functionality that really allows you to kind of see if there's gaps or if there's needs, and then being able to come up with the solutions on how to fix them. Okay, so the goal should always be the following. The goal should be, all right, we've added a household. This could be a client, this could be a prospect. There's several ways to get households added into AssetMap, but the goal is to get us here. Building a household where we have built out, okay, their full financial picture as to where they are today to the best of our ability. Granted, sometimes we're it's kind of up to the client to make sure that we have all the details if we don't know everything. But the idea is that if we can position the asset map as not only an asset for their estate, but also an asset for us to make sure that we do the best financial planning possible for them, I think that most people are going to appreciate that. And we can stress, like, listen, if you have assets being managed elsewhere or anything like that, it's perfectly fine. We just need to get them added here because we at least need to know that they're there so that they can be considered in our planning process. Okay, so I've already taken the liberty of building this out. This is for my Neil and Lauren Miller. So I've built out their asset map to the best of my ability. Now, usually whenever I'm preparing to potentially do like a loss of life analysis, which maybe life insurance is going to be what I recommend, okay, where we examine a loss of life in asset map is going to be here in target maps. Target maps are where we can mathematically quantify and determine, is there a need here or is there a gap? And if there is a need and there is a gap, what are we going to do to fix it? Now, when you go to run a target map, there's no target map that says life insurance, okay? We have a loss of life target map. The loss of life target map allows you to examine if a sudden loss of life took place, do they have plans in place in order to make sure their family's taken care of? If they're not meeting that need, okay, then that means that there's a gap. How you choose to fund that gap is your business. Okay, so that gap might be solved through other products and things. But I think many of us can attest in this industry that sometimes one of the most cost-effective options for solving for a loss of life can be through life insurance, right? Especially if like providing a legacy or making sure that your family's really taken care of. Sometimes life insurance can be one of the best options that we could recommend. Is that the only option you could recommend? No, of course not. And the thing I like to stress here is that loss of life, disability, long-term care, our target maps are designed to solve for, is there a need, yes or no? And if there is a need, what are we going to do to fix that need? So whatever products or whatever solutions that you want to recommend to fix that, you're welcome to layer those in. Specifically today, because we're focusing on what are some tools and features in asset map that can help us have life insurance conversations. I think the loss of life target map is going to be incredibly helpful to help you do that. We will run one of those in just a moment. Before we do that though, I want to encourage everyone that if you're not using Signals, I really want you to start. Why? Signals is an incredible tool. I think it sometimes gets overlooked because people are like, I just don't get it. I don't know how to use it. Okay, well, you should reach out. You should ask questions about it so that we can help you. But I'm going to give you a little bit of training on it today. Okay. Signals is a predictive model built into the back end that examines 6 critical life events that commonly disrupt families and households all the time. Okay. We design Signals to do the following. In every household, we take the primary client and the spouse, their ages, their incomes, their assets, so this asset map, we digest that information and we put it through the Signals predictive model. Now, the predictive model is built off of some industry standard algorithms. It's very round math. We don't share the algorithms with our users. And the reason we do that is because Signals is not a perfect solve. And we don't want people getting stuck on the math because we're not claiming that it's a perfect solve. Where you're going to run the numbers is target maps. But you know what Signals allows you to do? It gives you permission to explore. Sometimes people will come to us because they want us to run a retirement analysis. Sometimes people come to us because they just, they want to do some investment planning. Okay, great. But guess what? If we build their asset map to the best of our ability and we come to Signals and Signals points out to us that a loss of life could potentially be a problem, do we not owe it to ourselves to go run those numbers to determine, is there actually a problem? And if there is, what are we going to do to fix it? Because that is what I would appreciate from a financial professional. If through gathering my information, you realize there potentially could be a problem, you took the liberty of going to look into that problem, you ran the numbers, you found that there is in fact a problem, but here's together how we're going to fix it. That's full circle service. That's something I would appreciate. Okay. There's nothing worse than when you go to the doctor, for example, okay? Let's say that I got into a little fender bender and I broke my arm, okay? I go to the doctor because I know that my arm needs to be fixed, and that's an expectation that I have. I'm coming to you because you're the expert and you're going to help me fix my arm, period. Okay. Well, while I'm there and the doctor's fixing my arm, they realize that my breathing sounds funny, right? Because maybe there's something going on with my lungs because of the impact of the the if what's that thing called? We all have one. Oh my gosh, why can't I think of what that's called? The airbag in your car. Wow, there it is. Okay. Sorry, it's been a long week. So if while I'm getting my arm treated, somebody realizes like, hey, this doesn't look right, or this isn't really sounding right, I think we need to look into this deeper. I might need to get you in touch with X, Y, or Z, or I'm going to go run some additional tests because that is concerning to me. I'm going to appreciate that, because imagine if you didn't say anything and then I just went home and then it turned into an even bigger issue later down the road. I'd wonder, like, did you know that that was going on and you just like chose not to say anything? Since we were all young, I feel like a lot of us at least, I can't generalize and say all of us, but I think many of us were taught that if you see something and something doesn't look right, you potentially should just say something so that we can work together to try to fix it. The thing I love about signals is that it's a very non-aggressive approach to determining, does it look like there's any areas I need to dive into deeper? Okay. Now, Signals runs off of a color gradation system, green, yellow, red. Green indicates it appears that if this life event took place, there may be assets and things that we can pull from, and it may or may not be enough. Notice the language I just used. May or may not be enough. Just because a signal is green doesn't mean, oh my gosh, they're fine. Never mind, not going to worry about that. Okay. No, green does not equal, hey, they're 100% funded in the event that something like this takes place. Now, while we don't share the algorithms of signals, we do have an incredible support article that you can lean on. It's called Signals Benchmarks. So we won't give you the algorithms, we will give you some thresholds or benchmarks, if you will, so that you at least have some clarity as to what each of these signals are kind of looking at. Okay. Now I believe it's the liquidity signal. I think if it looks like they have above 60% of a liquidity need funded, it's just percent funded. There's no Monte Carlo happening here, just to be clear. Okay, it triggers green. Well, I don't know about you, but like 62% funded for a liquidity need does not equal, in my mind, hey, they're fine. Like that still feels like a significant gap. Like I'd want to go run the numbers specifically. Okay. So that support article is called Signals Benchmarks. Where can you find it? You're going to click the floating help button on the bottom right-hand side. Okay. I was using the support center earlier today. Look at me. Okay. So when you click on that help button on the bottom right-hand side, there's a box that says search for help. You're going to click in there and you're going to type in the word benchmarks. Okay. Start typing in benchmarks. Here's that support article. It will break down each signal and give you some of those thresholds so that you can kind of have a little bit more expansive knowledge as to kind of what goes into each signal. Now, within each signal, which let's finish the color gradation, okay, before we move on. Green indicates it appears that there's likely funding, and that funding may or may not be enough. Yellow indicates it looks like there's probably some funding. It's probably not enough. Red indicates even if there's a little bit of funding, this is not looking very good. So just like when you go to the emergency room, which I don't know if any of you have ever been to the emergency room, it's a horrible place. It's a necessary place, and thank God we have it. Because wow, like we need it, but at the same time, the emergency room is not a fun place to be. If you ever have to go to the emergency room, one of the first things they do is they put you through triage. Why? Because as people come in with injuries and things, they have to triage like who needs to be seen first. Typically people that are having like heart palpitations or heart problems and breathing trouble, those people are going back first. Why? Well, if you stop breathing and your heart stops working, that's not so good, right? So if Bobby Joe comes in with a little broken ankle, Bobby Joe is going to be in a lot of pain and is not going to be feeling so good, but Bobby Joe might have to wait an hour and a half before he's going to get seen because there's somebody else that maybe has to go back first. I like to use this analogy because I think Signals is the triage center for you, the financial professional. Because maybe we start with the areas that are red first, right? Maybe the areas that are yellow are most prominent to what we're talking to them about, right? Longevity, like I have concerns that you're not going to be able to go through the rest of your life through retirement if you keep spending the way you're spending. Maybe we need to talk about some ways to to build some sustainable income. Maybe that's through an annuity or whatever the case is, right? But let's talk about life insurance. Well, what do you know? Their loss of life is triggered red, indicating that there's likely a problem. If you click on the details tab of that signal, it will tell you what the signal's based upon, and it'll even give you some considerations to consider. But the whole point of the signal is to encourage you to go run the target map, which we will run in the next minute or so. Okay? Now, I've been working at AssetMap for 5.5 years. Okay? Signals has been out for a couple years now, but about 6 months ago, we made an incredible enhancement to Signals, specifically Signals and Sidebar. Let's navigate back to the AssetMap report. Many of you have likely noticed that when you're in an app, and you're in a household, you might have Sidebar enabled. Your Sidebar will indicate these applets over on the right-hand side. If you don't see Sidebar over on the right, check to see if you have this little tab on the bottom right. You might have just closed your Sidebar. I personally like to open and close mine often. Now, if you're wondering, well, what is Sidebar? Well, Sidebar actually came about, and I'm going to keep mine closed for now, because before Sidebar, it was always this. If you clicked into a member, the module opened in the middle of the screen and you worked through the tabs horizontally along the top. If you clicked into a financial, the module opened in the middle of the screen and you worked through the tabs horizontally along the top. But people did come to us with feedback and they're like, I don't like that when I click on something, it blocks all the protection assets. I can't see the members anymore. I don't like that I can't see the full map unless I exit out of it. Okay, so we created Sidebar to alleviate that. Why? Because if your Sidebar is opened or enabled, that means that if you were to click into a member or a financial, it opens the information to the right-hand side of the screen. And honestly, you're just working through the tabs vertically instead of horizontally. There's really no difference. It comes down to preference, okay? Everybody has their preference. Personally, I'm learning as I get older, I'm a bit of a creature of habit, and I personally like to keep my Sidebar closed. I'm often working in AssetMap behind the scenes, and so I personally like when I click into something, it opens in the middle of the screen. But here's why I need to keep my Sidebar readily available. Because in Sidebar, you can also access signals. You can also access target maps. But even though when you click into signals, okay, it's the exact same view that we saw over here in the main signals area of this household. You click the drop-down arrow of any signal and look, the exact same information is here. What's that signal based upon? What are those considerations? Go run the target map. Okay, now, for the first time ever, though, about 6 months ago, we made an enhancement that allows you to show related financials. So for the first time ever, while we don't give you the algorithms of signals, when you're in a household and you open up signals in Sidebar, you can preview a signal and it will isolate what instruments on that household's asset map it's even looking at or taking into consideration. So this supports what I'm reading here, which is we're looking at earned income against your current insurance. And based off of this logic, it's telling me that there's potentially an issue here. Now, I don't know how big of an issue it is. I got to go run the numbers specific to these people, and I'm going to do that right now by going to run a target map. But for example, while we're here, just because we're talking about it, notice that this long-term care signal's green. They don't even have long-term care insurance. But look, if you click the preview button, it's like, yeah, but whether or not they have long-term care insurance or not, this signal is going to liquidate whatever it has to liquidate in order to cover that. Because in real life, many people would have to do that. Does that mean we'd recommend that? No, not necessarily. So just because something's green doesn't mean we're like, no, they're fine, moving on. No. If you truly are someone that has like a holistic approach to providing advice, you're going to cover all these areas naturally over the course of your relationship. Now, if these people are in their mid 40s, am I talking to them about long-term care right now? Maybe not. So you can also snooze a signal. Okay. You can snooze a signal for a month, 3 months, a year, indefinitely, but you can snooze a signal and it'll gray it out. I kind of like that because in my mind, how I position this is we're tabling this for now. We'll talk about that later. Okay. Behind the scenes, though, if a signal indicates to me that there's a problem for a loss of life, that right there is an indication that I might have a life insurance opportunity. Again, a loss of life analysis does not directly mean that we're going to solve for it by recommending insurance, but if you are someone that sells life insurance and you are looking for life insurance opportunities, I think one of the best things you can do is leverage signals. If the signal indicates a loss of life is not looking so good, go run the numbers, because it's possible that the solution could be additional insurance. So let's go run those numbers, shall we? We're going to go into target maps. In target maps, I'm going to click new target map on the upper right. Okay, when you go to run a target map, most of the time you can only run it for one person at a time. Specifically, loss of life, long-term care, disability, you're running it for one person at a time. It's like, if this event takes place, will your family be fine? Okay, now, or will you be fine? Now, in real life, I'd run a loss of life for the primary client and the spouse. Today, we're only going to run one for the sake of time. And also, I believe that after you see me do one, I believe that you could do the other. Okay. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to run one for the primary client. Okay. Neil, he's 45. I'm going to click create. You're going to notice in a matter of seconds that whenever we choose one of our 5 pre-templated target maps, it takes a second, it'll run the target map, and there will already be some assumptions that are being factored in. Why? Because we have 5 pre-templated target maps using some default assumptions. Since the dawn of the century, defaults do not work for everybody. You are going to have to make some minor modifications, probably in every target map that you run, in order to make it specific to the person that you're running it for, or for whatever goal that you're trying to illustrate. Now, in our industry, when it comes to a loss of life analysis, there tends to be 2 prominent rules of thought, right? Human life valuation and lifestyle replacement. Now, our system default for what we're solving for is lifestyle replacement. Now, for those of you that may or may not be familiar with target maps, anytime you run a target map, they are all formatted the same. The structure, the logic, the math is the same in any target map you run. However, the specifics, right, the numbers and what we're solving for is going to be different. That makes sense. A retirement goal is completely different than a loss of life. Long-term care is different than education, okay? So the logistics of what we're solving for will be different, but the math and the logic will be the same. In a target map, there are 4 tabs along the top: what you want, what you have, what it means, and a cash flow details report. Whenever I run a target map, regardless of the type, I follow a very standard process. And maybe you'll like my process and it'll help you, and you will follow this process moving forward. You have to remember that I came from eMoney Advisors, so I was very used to a very comprehensive approach to financial planning with the Advanced Planning Center, with the Goal Planner, with the estate planning tool, all of that. When I first came to Asset Map, it took me a minute for target maps to click because the logic was different than what I was accustomed to. Now, it wasn't because the logic wasn't right. The logic is right. It just was different than what I was used to. And finally, after a couple months, I had a colleague that was helping train me because I was like, I still don't get it. I'm a very deeply analytical person. So like if I don't get something, I fixate on it and then I want to try to pick it apart. Finally showed me a method of teaching me a target map that really clicked for me. And that is how I prefer to train to it always. So whenever I run a target map, the first thing I do is I start in tab number 1, which is what do you want? Think of tab number 1 in every target map as what are we solving for? What's the goal? What's the expense? Like you can think of these things as, synonymous terms, right? Because these might be considered goals, but they're also technically expenses. It's money that we need to come up with to make available to your family, or like retirement. This is money that you need to come up with in order to fund your retirement, but it's also technically kind of expenses if you think about it. So I like to look at it as what are we solving for? What's the expense? Next, I come into the expected net return on capital box. I always delete this out and I put 0 and I click off to the side. I personally do not like to use the arrows to go up or down a point percentage unless I'm just going up 1 point or down 1 point. Why? Because if you're trying to go up 3 points and down 4 points, every time you click the arrow, the page reloads. So imagine if you're trying to go from 8% to 4%, the page is going to reload 4 times in your presentation. No, thanks. I hate to be blunt, but I'm like, I don't have time for that. So I like personally to click into the box. I remove the number. I put whatever number I want in there, click off to the white space. It will reload. Now, if you're only trying to go up 1%, or go down 1%, having the page reload, I think that's perfectly fine. But just as a little pro tip, that's what I like to do. So I always start in tab number 1. I always start with the expected net return on capital at 0. Now in tab number 1, this will always be after tax cash flow desired. And like I said, in our default, we're looking at lifestyle replacement. And we're only looking at the working years of the person that's passing away. So in this scenario, Neil Miller is passing away today, or as I like to say, if you passed away yesterday. But many of you might know my life and my story, but my dad passed away a couple years ago. He was killed by a drunk driver, unfortunately. And I just don't like to say anything in a presentation that indicates like, well, if you died today, it's like, well, if the day is still daying, I don't want to say that or put that into the universe for anyone. So I personally, if I give a presentation to a client, I like to say, assuming that you were to pass away, say yesterday, these would be the things that we're solving for, okay? Now, you don't have to agree with our defaults. You are welcome to change them. But our system default for a loss of life is income lifestyle replacement, specifically income replacement. The system default is 70% of the person who's passing away, their annual income. Now, this guy's salary is about $100,000 a year, but he does have other forms of income. That's why this number is so high. I actually don't agree with this number. So I'm going to click in here and I could adjust this. And I'd say, I think $85,000 of income replacement is a bit more reasonable. And then if I do override the default, I get rid of this text in the description. I never want to be in a scenario where a client's trying to do the math because they read that text and then the numbers aren't matching for them. It's like, we just don't need to do that. So anytime I override a system default in a target map that has text like that, like 70% annual income, 10% of their annual income, I like to just remove that text. Okay, so that's saying $85,000 today. We're going to grow that each year by a 3% COLA. Okay, and we're assuming that he passes away today and that he would have worked until 67. We don't agree with these assumptions. We make our updates. Okay, you're welcome to adjust it. Next is transitional income. This is a concept that not everyone speaks to, so if you don't like it, you can remove it. But the idea is that for transitional income, sometimes when people pass away, the first couple years after that person passes away, things can be more expensive. Maybe the spouse has to take an extended leave from work, can't collect a full salary. Maybe, they were remodeling the house and he was like a carpenter as a hobby, and now he's not going to be able to do any of the work. So now they're going to have to hire somebody, right? Maybe we found out that there were all these like unexpected like bills and things that we didn't know were supposed to be paid. I don't know, whatever. The point is like, do you want to assume that the first 3 years after this person passes away, there might be more expenses? If you do, leave it. If you don't, you can come over here and trash can it. And in my example today, I don't want to include it, so I'm going to remove it. After that, debt obligations. In a loss of life, our system default is to say, go look at this household's asset map, add up all the liabilities and debt, and let's assume we're going to pay it off. Now you might say, well, I'd only recommend that they pay off X debt, not all of it. Fine, you adjust it. I'm going to say pay it all off. Okay. Next is final expenses. These are things like your funerals, your cremation fees, burial plots, things like that. If there are dependents in the household, we do factor in an education for each dependent. So like college expenses, things like that. If we're like, you know what, I know that the grandparents would step in and pay for that, God forbid, if something happened to Neil, I know that they would do that and I don't want to account for that, fine, then you can go ahead and remove it. It's up to you. Okay. The last preset expense that we factor in is emergency reserves. I think the concept here is really just how much money would you want set aside so that your spouse would have an emergency reserve account, God forbid, if like unexpected things came about. Now, our system default for the emergency reserves account is to take 50% of the annual household income. So it goes and looks at the entire household, adds up all the income, and takes 50% of it. So sometimes this number can be quite high. So more often than not, you might be clicking in here and adjusting it. And I might say, my starting number I like to start the conversation at is $50,000. Okay, great. Then I'm going to remove this text because I overrode the amount. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click update. We put a placeholder for legacy and bequests if that's important to factor in additional expenses and things like that. You can click into it, add a number. If you don't want to include it, you can delete it altogether. It is up to you. In every target map in tab number 1, there's always an add desired cash flow button. This basically means add an additional expense. So if you wanted to add any other itemized expenses, you'd have the ability to do so. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Whenever you're in a target map, okay, this expected net return on capital box is used in a few distinct ways. Now, this is how I like to train to it, and I'm going to draw on my screen to help me do it. If you're in tab number 1, and this is set to 0, okay, we will look at these expenses for what they're worth today. We will inflate them by any COLAs that should be applied throughout any end age, which really the only one that's being applied is the ongoing income replacement. Well, if this is set to 0 and you're in tab number 1, then this over on the right will be the total future value of all of those expenses. That is straight line math. If I take $85,000 today and grow it by a 3% COLA every year for the next 22 years, I'm going to get $2.4 million. The rest of these are just straight line numbers. You add them all up, it's going to give you that number. Okay? So, assuming that this gentleman does in fact pass away, all of these expenses are going to equal $2.7 million. That's how much this is going to cost. So this is where we then go into tab number 2 and we get to decide, okay, well, what would actually be applied towards the funding of this goal, right? What cash flows, what assets, what insurance would we use to help pay for this need? Now, in a loss of life target map, by the way, everything in tab number 2, what you have is fed from the asset map report. This is why I stress you need to build the map first to the best of your ability. Fully build it out as best as you can, because then all those cash flows, assets, and insurance flow through to the target map in tab number 2. As you make updates to the asset map, those will flow through an update in the target map as well. Now, in a loss of life target map, you'll notice under cash flow sources, nothing gets checked on. You'll notice under assets, nothing gets checked on. And you'll notice under insurance, the only thing that gets checked on are the insurance policies tied to the person who's passing away. That's the only assumption we make, because we can't make any other assumptions. If this gentleman dies yesterday, we know for a fact his life insurance accounts that he does currently have, that money would pay out. Now, of course, you as the financial professional, you can come in here and you could check on what assets the spouse potentially could use to offset some of those expenses. You could check on cash flow sources if applicable. But remember, we're not even looking at retirement years. We're just looking at the years that this person would have worked. So like if your family can't even be taken care of in the years that you would have worked, like that's a problem. And we don't want to necessarily touch retirement assets because there might be large tax implications if your wife was to pull that money out early. And also she has to retire someday. There's probably like another 30 years of retirement life that we need to account for. So in today's example, I personally like to just have it be the current insurance. Okay, so that's all I have checked on. And you can see that we are 30% funded for this goal or this need. Okay, in every target map, there's a percent funded. This is not Monte Carlo, it's percent funded. This says we are 30% of the way there in completing this goal or fulfilling this need. Now, when you hover over the funding bar, it'll break down what percentage of the funding is insurance, assets, or income cash flow sources. You can see that the only thing I selected on or defaulted on in this case was the insurance. So we are 30% funded and 30% of that funding is coming from the current insurance policies. Okay, great. Click into tab number 2, the what it means tab. Tab number 3. Tab number 3 is a summarization of tabs 1 and tabs 2. Okay. We have a $2.7 million need. Your current insurance covers $800,000 of it. That means we have a $1.9 million deficit. But you might say, but wait a second, you didn't add any form of a rate of return. Well, but is a rate of return applicable here? This is why I urge people when you're running a target map, you should start the expected net return at 0, because who's to say that there even is a blended rate of return that can be applied? Now, here's how I like to look at this, okay? Once I tee this up, I go to the cash flow details report. The cash flow details report is where we check our work. Capital required column is tab number 1. There's all those expenses. Capital available is tab number 2. So assuming that this gentleman passed away yesterday, look at the first year. his wife would need to pay these immediate expenses, okay? And she would have the life insurance money of the current policies, but there would be money left over. Okay, so not all $800,000 of that death benefit that would pay out to the spouse would be used in the first year. So that means that there's money in our bucket. So arguably I could say, okay, well, I could take this $540,000 and if we roll it into some type of an account that can earn some level of a return, right? And I always use this example because I think about my own mom, right? My dad passed away, life insurance money paid out to my mom. She used some of that to pay off liabilities and things like that. But then there was a little bit left over and it was like, well, invest that because like that way you can try to like make the money last longer for you. Okay. Well, because there is money left over here and not all 100% of our funding is being spent in the first year, then I do feel comfortable coming in here and putting a blended rate of return. So I'm going to say 5% just to be conservative. Okay. If I earn 5% on that bucket of money, that leftover money, well, now we're 46% funded. Okay. Now look here. If you have a percentage in here and you're in tab number 1, so again, I'm going to draw on the screen. If you're in tab number 1 and you have a percentage here, in tab number 1, that percentage is used as the discount rate to help us calculate present value equivalent. So look, they don't have a $2.7 million need. It's only 1.7. Why? Because we're using the 5% as our discount rate. So here's how I like to read this. Assuming that long-term over time, we're able to average a 5% rate of return on your money, then if something was to prematurely happen to you, Neil, and we wanted to solve for all of these things, then our immediate need today would be $1.7 million. Okay, well, if we have 1.7 available and we have 800,000 being paid out of our death benefit, that still leaves us with a $931,000 deficit. Okay, this is our gap. This is our need. So what are their options? Well, Neil, Lauren, here's what could happen. If Neil passed away yesterday, Lauren, you'd have to write me a check today for $931,000. If you could do that, I could invest that money. I could average it at a 5% rate of return. If we could do that, this gap will be filled. She's going to be sitting next to him like, are you crazy? I'd already be working full time. There's no way I'm going to be able to come up with that kind of money. Okay. You know what I like to do? This duration of contribution box, typically in a target map, means how many years do you have left leading up to this goal or this need that you could make contributions, okay? That's usually what this means. So like in retirement, usually this box will be like, how many years do you have left before you're going to retire? Because this gap might be worrisome to people, but it's like, oh, but you have time to save that money and invest that money leading up to the event. For a loss of life, that doesn't work because we're indicating that this person passes away today. But you know what I like to do? I like to look at the income gap span. So 45 to 67 is 22 years. So if I come in here and I put 22 years, sometimes I like to do this for a loss of life to make things a bit more bite-sized. Well, what's more important to you? Potentially leaving your wife with this deficit that she's going to have to come up with on her own? Or if she couldn't write me that check, she'd have to start coming up with $5,700 a month every month for the 22 years that you would have been working. So could she get a second job? She's going to be like, no. It's like, well, we have solutions. Like we could do $1 million term or $1 million, VUL. And I can promise you that the insurance premium is going to be a heck of a lot lower than $5,700 a month. So what's more important to you? Pay a couple grand a year that comes out to bite-sized amount a month? Like what's more important to you? Having a plan in place and making sure your family's taken care of or not doing anything? Okay. Now, in tab number 2 of a target map, under cash flow sources available, you can add a custom cash flow asset. Under assets, you can add a custom asset. Okay. The idea behind these buttons are that you can add hypothetical cash flows or hypothetical assets that don't currently exist, but maybe we're layering them in as like a recommendation, okay? So they don't live on the asset map, they would live in the target map because we're illustrating it there. Oddly, for whatever reason, there's no button to add a custom insurance policy. So if you are working with life insurance and you would like to layer in a recommended life insurance policy, believe it or not, the best recommendation and workaround is that you come to the asset map and you add the hypothetical account here. So I'm going to right click my mouse. I'm going to click create. I'm going to come here and add insurance. okay? I don't sell insurance, so I'm just going to pick something random. I'm going to say like a VUL, and I'm going to call this like proposed new VUL, new VUL, okay? And I could put where it's going to be held at, and then I could put the death benefit. Maybe it's going to be $1 million. Okay, I'm going to have it tied to Neil. He's going to be the policy owner, okay? And then anytime I add something hypothetical to someone's physical asset map report, I do kind of like to call it out. So this is where I like to use emojis. So anywhere in asset map where there's a reference name or a location field, free text, if you're on a Windows computer, you can right click your mouse and access emojis. If you're on a Apple computer, I believe you double tap your keypad. But if I click emoji, this is where I can come and I can search for an emoji. Now, I like to use colored dots, as you can see. Okay, so maybe I'll put like a green colored dot, and that is just an indicator like, hey, I put this here for talking purposes. We're going to talk about why I put this here in just a few moments. Okay, but it pulls it out. Now, obviously, before I'm going to present any of this to a client, I'm going to test it. I'm doing the math. I'm doing like I saw signals. It was an indicator. I need to dive in more. I went and I ran the numbers in target maps. I've determined that there is a problem, but I want to find a solution to fix it. I sit down, I think about it, I back into my solution, the recommendation of what I want to layer in. Great. How do we layer it in? You can open up the target map you've already ran and go into tab number 2. And I could scroll in this list. And if I go down to the bottom, there's my new proposed VUL. And I could check it on. And I could test to see, like, would this $1 million get them to where they need to be? Looks like it would. Great. So I can do all of this in one target map if I prefer to kind of present things all in one target map. But I also sometimes like to break them out into 2 separate target maps so that there's a very clear distinction of here's where you are today and here's where you could be if you were to follow our recommendations of X, Y, and Z. So even though when I'm doing this behind the scenes for testing purposes, I might do it all in one target map to start. When I know that I'm comfortable with my recommendation, usually what I'll do is I'll uncheck my recommendation, leave it with the base case of what I was trying to show, which in this case is current insurance. And I can come up here to the settings tab and rename this target map. And I could call this current insurance. Help if I could spell today. Insurance. There we go. My brain is, I've had a headache for like a week. I apologize. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and title it current insurance. Now, once you've built your base case scenario of a target map, you've checked the math, you've checked the logic, you've renamed it, this is a really healthy place for us to clone the target map. If we click clone on the upper right-hand side, look what happens. It creates an exact carbon copy of all that hard work that we've already done. And now in the copy version that says copy, I'll click into this one, go into tab number 2. Scroll down to the bottom, and I will layer in my proposal, which is this new insurance policy. I layer it in. Once I've done that, then I can come up to the top and I can click settings and I can rename this. And I could call this like current insurance plus 1 mil proposed new VUL. Okay, you get the gist. I like to name things really clear so there's like no confusion on my part, no confusion on their part. If they're reading it, I get it renamed. But look how nice this is. If you open your menu on the left and you come back to target maps, look at this clear distinction. Here's where you are today, and this is if we do nothing, but here's where you could be if you were to follow a recommendation of X, Y, and Z. And you can do the same thing for long-term care, disability, retirement, which if you are someone who sells long-term care insurance, you can always layer a long-term care event into a retirement target map because sometimes that's really where it resonates most with people. Like, hey, if this happens to you, this could completely derail your retirement. And you don't have a plan in place right now, which means you're going to self-fund, which could potentially leave your spouse left behind with very limited funds to live out the remainder of their life because most of the money is going to be spent paying for this very large, very unfortunate life event. Okay. So just some things to consider there. Now, don't forget that in target maps, there's these check boxes. You can select a minimum of 1, a maximum of 3, and you can put them into compare mode. So sometimes when you're trying to have a discussion, being able to isolate from 1 to 3 target maps at a time can be really powerful to kind of just keep the information concise on the screen. In addition, if you're back on the main target map summary page, you can also filter target maps by type. So see these filters buttons up at the top? You can filter by type and you can say, let's just focus on loss of life. Great. It gets rid of all the other ones. So instead of having like 10 target maps on my page when I'm presenting, we can isolate and just talk about insurance. And then when we're done talking about that, maybe we then will talk about retirement. And then when we're done talking about that, then we're going to talk about disability. And then when we're done with that, maybe we're going to talk about education. Or we can click reset and we can have them all. And we can drag and drop these to go in whatever order we need to put them in order to have a meaningful conversation. Now, one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about in terms of having life insurance conversations is potentially you mining your book of business to look for a life insurance opportunity. People always forget that as you add more and more households into Asset Map, they all flow through here to your household index list. This is your list of households added into the application. Now, the data here is only as good as the data that you get put into households. This is why I stress that your primary focus should always be add the household, add the data, get it as close to complete as possible. Okay, update it annually. Maybe give them a client portal, maybe allow them permissions to log in and edit their information. Okay, there's a lot of things that you can do, but if you're somebody that has a tremendous amount of households added into Asset Map, or even just 10, it doesn't matter. Okay, your household index list can actually be used as a tool, a mining tool. When you first open up your household index list, it will sort all of your households alphabetically, and it will also have some columns that show some other data entry insights for those households at that given time. People often don't realize that you can come up here to the top and you can click the columns button, and you can actually change the columns that appear up along the top. So you can come in here and you could deselect some of these columns, isolate down to a few things, but we also have this expansive list of other data entry insights that might be of more interest to you. Okay. Now, the other thing you can do is if you click on the tops of any of these columns, it'll sort. So look, if I click on name, it goes instead of A to Z, from Z to A. Okay. If I click on it again, it'll revert back. If I click on owner, okay, it'll sort by house, like owner, like advisors that own the households. Now, I have a few different advisors under my office, meaning that we are all under the same Asset Map account. We just have our own licenses, but on the back end, we're all tied to the same company. That means that we can share households here and there when appropriate. And so like in my household index list, sometimes I like to sort by owner so that I can quickly find another household that I'm working on with another advisor. That may not be applicable to everyone here, just to be clear, but I just wanted to bring it up for the group. Okay. All right. Status will be like, is this household a sample household? Is it a client or is it a prospect? So you can sort by that too. It'll sort client, and then it'll sort if it's a prospect, and then if it's a sample. You get the gist. You can click on these up along the top and it'll kind of sort them either in ascending or descending order, and you can kind of go from there. Now, specifically, how can we use our household index list to potentially look for a life insurance opportunity? Well, here's what I like to do. I'll come to the columns drop down and I'll get rid of some of these columns. I like to keep owner, I like to keep status, and I like to I like to keep last modified, because that actually shows you the most recent households that you've worked on, by the way. So like if I click off, look how nice this is. If you click on last modified, it'll show you the households that you haven't touched the farthest away. So look, some of my households I haven't touched in 5 years. Okay. They're fake, just to be clear. Okay. If I click last modified again, it shows me who are the most recent people I've worked on. Well, I just worked on this person within the last hour, and that's why it's here. So if you're ever like, I can't find the person I was just working on, you can always use the last modified column to kind of click on the header to kind of find it to help you a little bit faster. Now, in the columns dropdown, you can sort through this list in your own time. I'm not going through this full list. There's no way. We don't have enough time. But we sort it out. We put it in alphabetical order. But you can also use the little search bar at the top to find the things you're looking for, or hoping to find the things. I can't promise we're going to have everything you're looking for. We have some really nice options in there. For example, I like to look at earned income when I'm looking for a life insurance opportunity. Okay, earned income. In addition, I like to look at death benefit amount, insurance death benefit. So like, how much insurance do you have collectively already? Next, I like to look at dependent count, right? Do you have dependents? And then lastly, I like to look at liabilities amount, because one thing I know to be true is the following. If you've got a decent amount of income, you've got dependents and you have a ton of outstanding debt, but you have maybe less than X in insurance, that potentially means that there could be a problem. And we might need to have a conversation about that. Okay. So this allows me to now mine my book of business. Now I can comb through this list and I can look for those opportunities. But look down here, ladies and gentlemen, I have 264 households. You think I have time to be combing through this list one by one? I don't, and you probably don't either, even if you only have 15 households added in. You can actually use filters to help you mine even deeper. So when you apply a filter, it's the same expansive column list of data entry insights, but you can apply parameters. So this is where I can type in earned income and I can say, hey, only show me households that are bringing in more than $200,000 of earned income. Next, show me insurance death benefit. I want to see households that have less than $2 million of life insurance. Next, I want to look at dependent count. Show me how, I clicked off. Don't you just hate when that happens? Let me go ahead and fix this. Get this back up here. Show me households that have more than $200,000 of earned income. This is why you have to be careful not to click off the screen because you will be doing it again like me. Coming back, we're going to type in insurance death benefit. I'll say, show me households that have less than 2 million of insurance. Next, let's look at dependent count. Show me households that have at least one or more dependent. Finally, show me liabilities. I want to see households that have more than, say, $80,000 of liabilities. Great. Click apply filter. Look, it does all the work for me, and it lets me know that 7 out of my 264 households match this filtering criteria. And what do you know? The young family that I was preparing for also indicated that that potentially could be a problem. So even though we don't give you the math of signals, it's like it kind of supports what we already know if we come and use filters based off of our own standards, right? Like this family signal told me that it was red. And by the way, okay, if you're on our elite level subscription, you have Signals Plus, which means what? That means that you actually can add the signals within the column. So if I come in here and I type in loss of life, I can add the loss of life signal to this. And look, it literally supports what I already know, which is if you're bringing in more than $200,000 of earned income, you have one or more dependent, you have more than $80,000 of liabilities, but less than 2 million of insurance, that potentially could be a problem. Well, look, the signals agree. Now, let's say that one of you finds a filter set and a column selection and you love it. And you're like, I don't want to forget what I've selected here. You should save it as a household index layout so that 6 months from now, you can flip back to it. And now it might say 8 new households and these 7 might go away because we fixed those, but there might be 10 new households, or it might jump from 7 to 17 because we've added, 100 new households in the last 6 months because we've expanded our team or whatever. How you do that, which by the way, you can click into the filters at the top to quickly update or adjust them, but have your filter set, have your column selection, then click save on the upper right and click save as. If you do this, you're going to give it a name. I might call it life insurance opportunity, and I'm going to click save. Once you do that, then here in your household index layouts dropdown, it's going to be saved. So look, if I go back to the home page, come back into the household index list, it reverts back to whatever the default was before. But I can come to my layouts drop down and flip back to life insurance op, and what do you know? It's going to bring me back to exactly what I was looking at a moment before. But as the household's information changes, some of these people might fall off this filter set because maybe they have enough insurance now. Okay. Now, if you are on our elite level subscription, that means you have Signals Plus, which means you can add the signals individually as a column, but we also have an option here called signals in your dropdown, which would show you signals across all of your households for all 6 of them. And then you could use filters to like mine for opportunities that way too. So it's something I just wanted to address and bring up to the group because I do think that there are so many ways to mine and look for opportunities. Obviously, our focus today was how to have life insurance conversations, but you might sell long-term care insurance. You might, there's a lot of need for disability insurance. Longevity could be great for having conversations for products like annuities and things like that, right? What about liquidity? Let's make sure that you have enough emergency reserves. Let's have a conversation about that. Just so you know, most of the time legal liability will be red for most households unless they have some form of like umbrella coverage. So just like be aware of that. And even when you're in this Signals Plus view, you can go to the column selection, and if you wanted to turn one of those off, you could just uncheck it. So look, if I'm like, I just want to focus on long-term care, longevity, and loss of life, I can just isolate down to those. All right, as we're starting to wrap up today, I do want to see if you would be willing to engage with me with a quick poll. First, I just want to know, do you love AssetMap? If you do and you have interest or would be willing to maybe leave us a review just to quickly share what you love about AssetMap, it would mean a lot to us. Honestly, I ask this more for, our peers in this industry that are looking for technology to help better their clients. So if you are willing, I'm going to post the link in the chat. You can click on the link right there. I'll also follow up with you probably next week. If not, it's okay to love us and not want to leave a review. That's perfectly fine. I'm not going to be like, oh, I can't believe you didn't. Don't stress about it. It's not a big deal. Okay. All right. Other than that, where I'd like to leave us today is with the following. I'd like to leave you with some next steps. So in terms of next steps, I'm going to encourage you that if you're not super familiar with running a loss of life target map or the loss of life signal, hop in, start playing around with them. Reach out to the support team when you have questions. Let us be an aid to support you. Always be on the lookout for our next Accelerate series webinar. If all things go accordingly, next month's going to be a very exciting webinar because we will be showcasing a brand new feature that we are hopefully releasing towards the end of this month. TBD, so I'm not going to announce it quite yet, just in case some things change, but for sure before the end of the year, we have a very exciting new feature that's going to be coming out. Those of you that said you would be willing to leave us an honest review, thank you. That does mean a lot. I posted the link in the chat. I'll also post it in the email follow-up. Finally, the last thing I'll leave you with is our final boot camp of 2025 is coming up in October. I can't even believe it. I can't believe that we're in the middle of September. I can't believe that my final boot camp of 2025 is coming up in October. But if you are interested and you would like to join us, this is going to be your final opportunity of the year to do that. So if you're not familiar, we actually host a virtual boot camp once a quarter. It's a 3-day event, half-day sessions each day. So our final boot camp will be October 21st through the 23rd. That is a Tuesday through Thursday. We recognize that 3 days, 5 hours each day is a time commitment, and many of you, have, client meetings and things. So the good thing is if you do register for boot camp, you can kind of hop in and out depending on your calendar if it doesn't allow you to be there the full time. We do record the sessions and we do make the recordings available to attendees for up to 30 days post-event. Usually I make it available for like 40 or 50, depending on where we are in the year, just because of holidays and, summer and people's kids being out of school. And I just like to give people enough time to watch it back. So if you are on our professional level subscription, we are offering early bird pricing. That will be live through the remainder of this week. So if you want to snag an early bird seat with 35% off, definitely do that. As a reminder, if you're on our elite level subscription, boot camp is included in your subscription. So you don't have to pay anything. Okay. It's a tremendous amount of savings. If you go look at the site and look at a ticket, you'll be like, what? Boot camp's included at Elite. Yeah, if you're not on the Elite level subscription, you might want to consider it simply because of boot camp. A 3-day ticket to boot camp is $900. So if you're on the Elite level subscription, you can come to boot camp 4 times a year. That's almost $4,000 worth of savings that you're getting. Plus, there's perks of being on the Elite level subscription, things like custom branding, things like custom questionnaires, Signals Plus. Okay, there's more. All of this to say, if you'd like to join us, please feel free. I do not provide the elite level coupon code because there's a mix of people on today's call and I can't have people using the code when they're not allowed to. So if you're like, I don't know if I'm professional or elite, you can reach out to the support team. We can check your access and then we can give you the code and we can go from there. Other than that, all I have left for us today, and then we're going to be right at time, is what did you think of today's webinar? This is more for me. If you wouldn't mind just taking a second, let me know what you thought of today's call. Did you find value in it? Are there other topics that you'd like to learn more about? You can submit that in the survey. Other than that, that's all I have for us today. Thank you so much for your time, your dedication, and I hope to see you at the next one. And we are exactly at time. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. And if you have questions, I can stick around. You can ask them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day.